In this episode of the How to Do Your 20s podcast, we're going to be talking about triathlons, training for triathlons, the diet you need, everything that goes into it. Plus, of course, we're going to be talking about some entrepreneurship. And today I have Eric on the podcast. So first off, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get involved in triathlons? What led you to this path?
Okay. It's not the shortest story, but
I got time.
I grew up in Indiana. I was always a runner. Endurance sports were my thing. I also played like basketball. I was okay in high school. I mean, I thought I was good, but I wasn't a state champion. Went to Indiana University, and I was a walk-on. I ran track and field. We had a legendary coach, Sam Bell, and our freshman class. We had Olympians that were already there. I started in '88. We had two Olympians from the summer of '98, or of '88. I'm sorry, '88, and I was pretty bad as a walk-on freshman, and we'd run with the groups on the cross country course. He'd put us into groups of 5 or 6, and often I was like there was one or two women in my group, and we actually had some pretty amazing women there. One who would become national champion, and that freshman year we had like a track meet before Christmas break, and coach almost cut me. And thank God he didn't, because I don't know how my life would have turned out if he did cut me. He cut some other guys, like everybody below me, and he cut me. And then sometime that I got better during track season. At one point, he wasn't big on compliments, but he said to me, he's like, I think one day you might score for us in the Big Ten championships. And stuck with it, got better and better. My very last track meet, I was 7th in the Big Ten 10,000 championships, and they scored the top 8. So I guess it came true in the last race. And but I also loved cycling. I saw Ironman. I remember reading a story about Dave Scott winning Ironman Hawaii in the 80s. He was a 6-time champion. And so that always kind of drew me. I was there in school for 5 years because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought I was going to get eligibility for my 5th track and field season, and because I had been injured. And then like one day in the fall, I found out that I had no eligibility. Coach just told me, and I was kind of stunned. And for an hour, I was like, well, this sucks. What am I going to do now? But luckily, I had 4 roommates who were all cyclists, and the Little 500 is a big bike race in Bloomington for Indiana University. And they were all very good, and 2 of them were on the team Cinzano that came out of the movie Breaking Away. And so I raced for that team, had an awesome time. It was like my last semester was probably when I had the most fun. I just let loose. Got better at cycling, and then I started doing triathlons while I was in school, and I was a horrible swimmer. I did duathlons also, and graduated, took a job with Arthur Anderson for 5 years as an accountant, but I always raced. I wanted to race. I dreamed about how can I just race. And then I quit after my 5th year. I was going to go back to school and get my MBA, and so that was an excuse. All right, I have the summer. I can go train in Boulder, Colorado. I went there and trained, and then deferred school for a year, and then never went back and raced triathlons. Turned pro, and which pro meaning I had the license to be a professional triathlete and duathlete. I was much better at duathlons, and so I was pretty poor during that time of my life. I took up coaching also, started a website, and raced and had a great time, and did that from probably the time I was 28 till when I was 34. I quit racing.
So why run triathlons? Like, for this average person listening here in their 20s, it seems like a pretty intense thing to do. What's the benefit?
I think it depends on the people. I've interviewed all kinds for my podcast. Some of them, like, they just see it one day and they think, oh my gosh, I got to do that. And they sign up, and some of them will do an Ironman in their first year, which is kind of crazy, but it's doable. For some people, it's the progression. Like, they get into running or cycling and they want something more, and then they just go into it. For other people, they're like, they just kind of hit the wall when they're like, I'm unhealthy, I got to do something, and triathlon catches their interest. And then, for most people, it just hooks them, and, it becomes something that they just do and they're passionate about it. Some people do it all their life. Some people do it for a couple of years, but for a lot of people, it just hooks them in one way or another.
And when you train people, are most of the people that come to you out of shape? Are they somewhat athletic, or are they more elite level people?
Um,
Or is it a wide range?
you get a range. I don't target the elites, although I have coached some elite duathletes. A lot of them are just age groupers. Some of them who have been pretty good and they just want to get better. Some are new to the sport. Like the most recent one I took on, she did cycling. She liked running. She wanted to race duathlons, so she came to me. And like they don't know how to put it together. Like when I started, I didn't know how to put the training together, and so that's what they're coming for.
So the average listener, let's say they decided, yeah, I want to run a triathlon. What would be some of the first steps if you were to, let's say, consult with them? What would be some of the first steps in getting their training started?
Just go out and do something, move, run, bike, and swim. And you don't like you can just get on any bike and go ride and just do it. Just go run. Sign up for a 5K. Like that'll help motivate you. If you have no swimming experience, ideally you want to get some help in the pool. I mean, maybe go a few times on your own to just get comfortable. Like, what am I doing with goggles? Getting in the pool and all that. But if you can find like a group, there's a lot of masters group, and that's just a term, masters. It doesn't mean over 40. It's just a term that applies to swimming. A lot of pools will have a masters group. So there's a coach and you can swim on deck. I mean, there's coaches on deck. You can swim with them. They might have people in 5 lanes, all different speed levels. So you can just go and say, you could say, I'm new. They'll put you in the slowest lane and they'll give you some help. I mean, they're not going to give you one-on-one coaching, but it's a good way to get started and get motivated. Or you can go with a friend who helps you. I mean, just try the swimming anyway, and just go do stuff. And a lot of times your first year, unless you decide I want to do an Ironman my first year, if you do that, get a coach or do a lot of reading online to figure out how to do it, because it's such a monumental task. Very doable, but you just don't want to get it wrong. But just go do it and give it a try.
And what kind of gear do you need? I mean, do you need, I've never actually done one, but I've seen the videos of people with like wetsuits. What kind of a bike would you recommend? Like, if you are going to do it, what kind of gear for, let's say, your average person, not someone at the elite level?
Yeah. If you decide you're going to get a road bike, which you're going to be fastest on, get a bike fit. Go somewhere and have somebody fit you on your bike. Because if you're uncomfortable on your bike, you're just not going to enjoy it. So go somewhere and get a bike fit. Just about every bike shop will do a bike fit. You can find people who do it independently and get a bike fit, and or just walk into a store. They can help you find a bike. Like, you don't need a $5,000 bike to be fast. You can spend a lot less than that. You can spend under $1,000. You can get good used road bikes as long as you know the right size. So like if you're getting a road bike, they might be measured in like 56 centimeters, 54, 58. I mean, if you're sized for 54, you don't want to be riding a 60 centimeter bike. It's just going to throw things out of whack. So just make sure you get your fit right. That's the most important thing with a bike. And you need the helmet, and you need cycling shoes if you have clips on your pedals.
And then as far as nutrition, what kind of nutrition do you follow leading up to the race? Let's say even the day before the race and then during the race, because I know it's a pretty long event, so you're probably going to be snacking a little bit.
Yeah. The answer to that varies so widely, and
Okay.
people have so many different views. I think like with anything, you want to eat a good diet, minimize your processed foods. If your fuel intake will need to go up, I mean, unless you're already overeating with your training, and if you go from nothing to a lot of training, your appetite's probably going to go up pretty quickly. So I would just say get a good mix of balance between protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And there are some people who go, I think you've had people talk about, ketogenic diets on your podcast. So there's a wide range. If you go ketogenic and try to do triathlons, for most of the population, it's going to be extremely tough and probably not good for you. So I would just go with a good mix, and you can refine it from there. There are some people who go with high fat, low carbohydrate diets, and it works for triathlon. But to do that, you really have to know what you're doing, and it probably won't work for a lot of people. And like a standard mix is probably going to do the trick for just about everybody.
So the last time that you ran a triathlon, I'm just curious, and if you don't remember the specifics, that's okay. But during the race itself, like what kind of, because I know it's long enough that you probably are eating a little bit of stuff. Maybe I'm wrong there, but what kind of things would you be eating while doing it?
Well, like a race under 1 hour, you probably don't need anything. Under 90 minutes, most athletes won't need anything. Once you get above 90, you probably want usually just simple carbohydrates are easiest. It can be a gel, like they're in common packets with 100 calories, or a bottle of Gatorade or a similar type drink. When you get longer, like over 3 hours, you're going to need more. So my last race was Ironman Wisconsin, and that was a 9-hour race. And so it's going to vary also on how much you weigh. I weighed like 150, 155 pounds. So my target, during the swim, it took 63 minutes. I'm not taking in anything. It was a 5-hour bike, and my goal on the bike was, I want to say, roughly 400 calories an hour. Some top pros will be 500, a little more. If you're going slower, you don't need as much. I mean, if you weigh less, you won't need as much. I would say for a lot of athletes, 300 calories might be fine. But it's a little bit personal preference, and that's a big part of figuring out an Ironman or a half Ironman, figuring out what works for you, because everybody's different. But on that race, I think 400 calories on the bike, maybe more. So I took no solid food. That's harder to digest, especially the faster you're going. So I had a bottle of Carbo Pro, which it's kind of tasteless. So you don't know how many calories you're taking in. I think I put like 1,000 calories in it, and you mix it with water. And so I'd mark on the bottle 200 calories, 400, so I knew how much I was drinking, because you could literally drink this whole thing and maybe not realize it in time, and that would be way too much. So I'd measure it out, and I'd also drink it with water, because you don't want something too concentrated. I would take in my gels. I'm sure I probably took in Gatorade, and I took in salt tablets during that also, which some people do, some people don't. And then the run, it was the running's my strength, so I did like a 2:55 marathon. And it was just gels and Gatorade or whatever they had on the course. And it's harder to take in nearly as much when you're running. So maybe I took, I don't know, maybe 200 calories an hour. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
But it really is, it's an art that a lot of athletes have to figure out while they're racing.
So obviously, for all the listeners, if you want to learn more in-depth stuff about this, you can go check out Eric's podcast, and I'll put links in the show notes to that. But I want to transition a little bit more on the entrepreneurship side, and then later in the show, we might have to dive in a little bit into the poker. But
Okay.
what was the first, or how did you get the first client that you trained for, their first triathlon or that kind of a thing?
So I moved to Boulder in 1998, and I just happened to, the domain duathlon.com was available. And for anybody who doesn't know, duathlon is just a running and biking race. Not as popular as triathlon, but there's plenty of races around the US. And that domain just happened to be available. So I snagged it. And it wasn't too long before I was updating. I mean, this was super basic updating. And I was racing, not making any money. I had savings saved from working, but I was burning through that pretty quickly. I was making no money, and I decided, all right, coaching would be a good way to aid in this. And I'd also learn a lot more about my racing. So in my website, actually, I covered triathlon and duathlon, and there was no website that was doing a good job of covering the sport on a worldwide basis. And early in '99, I just started posting big race results on my website, and before anybody else, and way more complete than anybody else. And so for like a 2-year period, it was clearly the #1 website in the world for triathlon and duathlon news. I was bad at monetizing it or making it a focus. I think at the most, maybe I had 15,000 in revenue, maybe 2000, 2001. But I also advertised my coaching on that. So I remember my first coach, Bob Scott, contacted me. He was maybe 60 at the time. He lived I think in Santa Cruz, and I just started coaching him and just got more athletes that way.
So everyone would just reach out to you pretty much organically, it sounds like.
Yeah, for the most part. There's a lot more coaches now than there were then, but it was either that way or I'd go to the races. They'd know me at the races. They'd see me, and because I was one of the best duathletes in the U.S. I was the national champion in 2004. So just going to races was good exposure, and I would get more athletes that way also. And I also then eventually I became part of a coaching group, Joe Friel's coaching group, and he's very well known, and so I got more that way.
And how did you get traffic to the website in the first place? Was it all just organic from Google?
It was organic, yeah.
I envy you. That's like, because it sounds like it was back in the days where it was probably a little bit easier to rank, not as much noise as there is now.
Less noise. I honestly don't I'm guessing back. I don't remember going to Google, and Google didn't exist in 98, 99.
Oh, okay.
But I don't remember what my rank was in the search engines. But also it just spread by word of mouth, because it was the only way that people knew how to find news. Mine was there first. I'd wake up on a Saturday, Sunday morning. I was always home unless I was out training, so I just put up the results right away, and that was it.
And nowadays, how do people find you? Other than, I'm sure there's a lot of word of mouth, but how do people find you outside of that? Is it still the website?
Yeah, the website. I have a coaching website, but I honestly don't promote my coaching anymore. So I will in the right situation, I will take on new clients, but I'm not really actively engaged trying to get more clients. But yeah, it's either online or, friends of friends or people who just know me from the sport, or it could be my podcast.
So then so nowadays it sounds like most of your money is coming from poker, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's dive into that because that's something I've had a lot of friends that play poker, and it seems to be a lot of the online entrepreneurs I know. I'd say about 50% of them started in poker. Did you play poker your entire life, or how did you first get involved in poker?
I played card games when I was young. I think we played poker, like just 5 card draw, and I played with my friends. I remember like eighth, ninth grade, like one time I lost $5 and I just thought I felt awful. But then, like, I think we didn't really play much. Maybe a couple times in high school, played euchre, which is a Midwest game, and other card games. And then, man, maybe in college just a couple times, or maybe like when I was working a couple times. And then I don't remember anything. And then poker got big. And 2004, one day, my best friend called me and said, "Hey, we're going over to my friend's house to play Texas Hold'em," which I had never played that form of poker. And I was like, I don't know how to play. And I was like, kind of thinking about not going. And he said, "Well, just come over anyway." So like that phone call changed my life.
Mm.
And we went over there and played. And I didn't win anything, but I was hooked. Like I just wanted to know more. We played home games. I got the software to play online, like just to practice. And then one day I went to the local casino in Colorado up in the mountains in Blackhawk and started playing low stakes poker. And then I knew it existed online, but I'm like, no, I don't want to do that because that's going to take up a lot of my time. But maybe 6 months later, I did it, and I think the first day I won like $700. I put down 500 and won 700, okay. And then I lost that, and then I lost the next 500, and then I think I put in 100, and then I think I ran that up and never really had to make a deposit again after that. And but it took me, I'd read about people making a bunch of money, but I really didn't believe it. Like I was just playing a little bit. I think maybe 2005 I won $2,000, but just started playing more. Sometime in 2006 it just clicked. I started making money, and then 2008 I would say I figured it out a lot more. But that was another transition I had. It kind of took away from my racing a little bit because I was so passionate about this. And I was going to race in 2006. And I started out that year. I did a 10K. I'm like, all right, if my time is decent, I'll race. I had a decent time. And then I remember like a week later going out for a run one day. And I got like 2 minutes from my house. I was by Wonderland Lake in Boulder. And I'm like, I'm done. Like, I don't need to race anymore. So that was just another big transition in my life. And then I just poured my energy into poker.
So one thing I've always wondered, so I grew up playing, I think it's just called 5 card stud, like the, whatever. Why is Texas Hold'em the thing that is so much more popular and all the World Series of poker is played in?
I think it's just the most interesting. Like there's the most possibilities. I don't know. It's probably the least straightforward. Like people have two whole cards down. So like you have no idea, you don't know any of their cards. You see what's on the board, but those 2 cards down just kind of leave it more of a mystery. And it just seems to be the game that captures the most interest.
And if someone listening to this podcast or me wanted to read a book or learn more about how to actually play like professionally, what would you recommend?
Well, it's much harder now than it used to be. Like the game started in the early 2000s and people were so bad. I mean, even the good players by today's standards would be bad. And so people have figured out a lot more about the game. So if you're going to play, I would say it's only, you can play online, but technically it's only legal in 3 states. I would say just practice, play really low stakes, like 1 cent, 2 cent, if you can find it, or go to the casino and play low stakes and just get the hang of it. And then if you like it enough, there's honestly not one book I could recommend. There's a bunch of good free videos now you can find online on how to play. If you become more serious, there are training websites you can sign up for that have videos that they post on how to play, and like those are going to have the most current information on how to learn.
And how many hours a day or a week do you spend now trying to play or playing poker?
Maybe 100 hours a month of actual playing. There's other time involved in studying or, working with software or, kind of admin type stuff with it also.
Really? Okay. I didn't know about
a lot of it, like getting your computers to work right and getting all the software to work. Like sometimes it's a huge pain in the butt trying to get that to work.
What kind of, I mean, the software obviously to play the game, but what other kind of software is there?
Well, there's tracking software, so and it's legal to use. So if I'm at a table with 6 players, it'll tell me how many hands they're playing, how often do they raise, how often do they fold, all this kind of stuff. And you want all that configured. And like, it seems like I go through a new computer every year or two, trying to get it on a new computer, getting it to work, and like there's things in New Jersey with their websites that don't work the way they should. So that stuff ends up taking more time than it should. If your internet connection doesn't work, like that's a huge problem.
Do you still go into the casinos? And I had some friends that actually lived in Vegas, and they would just sometimes go to the casinos, wait till like 3 in the morning when you get a bunch of people that are drunk and don't really care. And they said that would be a lot easier than playing online poker. Do you still ever go into casinos, or is it all online?
I go occasionally just to mix it up. I mean, it's more for entertainment because I everything I do is at home,
Yeah.
and like I live in New Jersey. I've been here 2.5 years. I don't know that many people, so it's kind of like a social outing for me just to get out of the house.
Yeah.
So I do go occasionally, yeah. But I have 2 kids now, so going in at 3 a.m. or doing that kind of stuff is pretty hard.
Not going to happen. So
Yeah.
moving to New Jersey, this is just a random question because I recently just moved to Santa Monica here, been here for about 5, 6 months. What have you done or how have you found as good ways to meet new friends? And it sounds like that's still something you're working on a little bit.
In New Jersey,
Yeah.
I'm a bit of an introvert, so it's not the easiest thing to me. In in Boulder, like it was easy to meet people because I'd go work out and that's what people do, or like people did what everybody else did in Boulder. And like people, it's a super healthy place. People move there, they're not interested in endurance sports, and then they just kind of get into it. Or like you can go hike, you can do anything. So it's really, I thought it was a lot easier to meet people. Um, when I lived in LA, like, how long have you lived there before? This is your first 6 months.
I'm originally from LA, so I had a few friends
Okay.
anyways, but I probably can guess where you're going with this, but your opinion, what was your opinion of LA and meeting
There's
people?
just such a crazy mix of people.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, we lived in 2 different places, and one was like a nice condo building we rented, where like the condos were like $600,000, and there were crazy people that lived there, where like they had the police come out that you see on TV with the spotlight search, like they're looking for somebody in our building who's hiding in the building. And like the other place, we lived in a nice neighborhood, and like there was a spotlight search on our street with a helicopter. Like you just never know what's going on.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of nice people in LA. It's just, again, doing what I do, I would meet people at the casino. It's the biggest place because the people I coached, it's mostly online. So I didn't meet that many online, or it'd be my wife's friends who she worked with. So New Jersey, same thing. My wife has family here, so I meet people that way. I could do CrossFit at the CrossFit gym. I meet people. And then our neighborhood now, I really like where we are. Like people in New Jersey, I feel like are a lot less like me, but I feel like people are friendly everywhere if you just get a chance to know them. But our neighborhood now, there's a lot of people with young kids, so it's been easier getting to know people here. But it's always
And
a bit of a challenge for me.
yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty extroverted, and it's still a bit of a challenge because, anytime you do something like that, it's like you got to go out and do things by yourself, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
trust me, I know I'm there. So we're in January right now, and I'm curious for 2017. What are some of your goals? Are you pretty much at the point now where you're happy? Because the one thing I wonder about is poker is probably not the most scalable thing as far as increasing income. Are
Yeah.
you more just kind of not just going on as like a standard path, or are you looking to increase income in 2017?
Yeah, it's something I wrestle with because it's not scalable. It takes, I can't pay somebody else to do it for me. So I just got to do it. The thing is, I love doing it because it's like you just never know what's going to happen any single day. Who's going to show up? Like, it's a game where the outcome is based on skill and you can make money. But I mean, you have good runs, you have bad runs. Like you can play great one day and you're just not going to make money. It's just trying to lose as little as possible. So I like the variety for me is fantastic. And then learning, like the game keeps evolving what we know about the game and the best way to play. So I really love that challenge of it. I do like my for making more money, I guess I could go to the casinos, play higher stakes in Atlantic City. Like Pot Limit Omaha is another version of the game. I could try and learn that better. But I honestly, I'm 46 and I've got 2 kids and I want security for the rest of my life. And I don't know, like, I don't know what the state of online poker is going to be at the end of this year, next year, 10 years from now? So it's a question I always ask myself. When I started this podcast back in 2013, it was like, all right, this could be another revenue source. And I started it, and I'm kind of bad about creating revenue out of things I do. So I don't know if you've seen the web, like I have no advertising, I have no nothing, but I do like variety in my life. So it gives me another outlet to, like, I do interviews with people, and like they're often just energizing because I learn so much from these people, whether they're somebody who's in their first year of the sport or somebody who's been a coach for 20 years or a professional athlete. Like, I always learn from these people. And so I always feel like if I needed to go back to that as a revenue source, I could, and it's something I really enjoy. But I honestly, it's something that I have to keep thinking about, like, what are other revenue streams, or, you know, how can I grow my income? And I don't have the answer to that. And I guess, like, as long as poker's going well, it's not something I need to figure out right now, but it's always something that I wonder about.
Yeah. Yeah. So if poker were to go away, it sounds like you'd be able to fall back on the podcast, on training and doing all the coaching, is my guess.
It would take some work. Yeah. I mean, I'd have a lot of income to replace pretty quickly, but yeah, I mean, it's one possibility.
Okay. So I want to start to wrap up here, but I have one question I always like to ask the guests at the end. And this is, if you could go back and tell your 20-something-year-old self, you could say 25, some advice on life, or alternatively, obviously, just give advice to all the 20-somethings listening to that about life. What would the advice be, and why?
I've been lucky that I've been able to follow my passion and do something that works. So I was an accountant, public accountant in Indianapolis, and that, like, accounting wasn't my passion, but I was lucky because I worked in a great office with great people. And like a lot of the people in public accounting, I didn't understand what public accounting was before I did it. It's not like you're just sitting down at a desk and crunching numbers the whole job. That job requires a lot more human contact, public accounting, because you're going around to different companies. But it was like an amazing learning experience for 5 years, working with great people, and you get to see so many different businesses and what works and what doesn't. But I just knew in my heart, like, I can't see myself doing this my whole life. Like, you could do it, you could make a great income, but I'm going to be, working probably 50 plus hours a week if I stay doing that. And like, I like being outside. I love having the freedom of working my own schedule. But, that just gave me so much knowledge, and something I could always fall back on. I guess I could go back to accounting probably if I wanted to. But then I decided, I knew I wanted out, and my way out, like, I couldn't think of one. I was like, well, if I go get my MBA, that could be my way out. But I don't think I was dying to get my MBA. And then so I went to Boulder and I stayed there. And I was actually pretty poor for a long time, just racing. But I mean, in many ways, I was happy. But I would say, like, if you're in your 20s, and find your passion if you can, and just work as hard as you can, whether it's at your current job or, find something outside of it that you can build. Like, any business, like, there are people who have worked full-time jobs and they build something on the side and it becomes something. So it's like the 20s are your time to work and become really good at something. And then the payoffs become in the 30s, 40s, and down the road, and you get all those payoffs from that. So yeah, I'm just lucky the way things have worked out, because there were times in my life I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how this is going to end up.
But it looks like it's all worked out now.
It's all worked out now. Yeah. Hopefully if you asked me from a year from now, I'd say the same thing, but yes, I'm happy.
And that kind of brings up something interesting I've been thinking about recently, is when you're walking down in LA, especially, Santa Monica area, there's a lot of homeless people. And when you're walking around, and I see the homeless people, I've never encountered one. I'm sure that it exists, but I've never encountered one that was like, yeah, I tried to start a company and now I'm sitting here on the streets. It's pretty much everyone that's homeless has got, either mental or drug issues. And it just makes me think, it's like, I don't know too many people. It's like those people that really try to go after something they're passionate about. Sure, they might fail, but it's usually they have some kind of a safety net. So I don't know, just a random thought.
Yeah, well, that brings up, there was one other piece of advice I was going to make, but also when we lived in Marina Del Rey, I forget the street now, right, that we lived on, but it ran right into Costco. There was this homeless guy there who, most homeless guys, like, they walk around slow. This guy, like, was youngish and skinny, and he always walked around really fast. And I always wanted to know, like, what's your story of how you got here? We gave him money once. I tried to talk to him, but he would never talk. And he lived right by, it was like a GNC right there on the corner, right across from Costco or some store like that. And I was always curious. But but so the other piece of advice I was going to give is like, I assume your audience is into personal growth. So one
Yeah.
experience that I had lately, you know who Tony Robbins is?
Yep. Yeah.
Have you seen in the documentary, I'm Not Your Guru?
Yeah.
So me and my wife went to Date with Destiny just last month. And we didn't watch the documentary beforehand because I didn't want to see it. I wanted to be surprised. And all I can say is like that experience, 6 days, starting at 10 a.m., between 10 and 11 a.m., going to like 1 or 2 a.m. at night. Each night was like one of the most amazing experiences of my life, like for 6 days. And I've gone to Unleash the Power Within, which is a shorter version. And I've used his CDs, and like I found that all that stuff has been extremely valuable. Probably like the best investment was his CDs of Personal Power, which was like a $200 investment back when I was 20 years old. Like that's something I've always referred back to, and I think that's led me a lot to what I've accomplished today, and like it's just been great for my life. And if anybody has a chance to go to one of his events or even Date with Destiny, like it is truly an amazing experience that you'll never forget.
Is there any other type of events like that you've gone to, or any other? I'll just call it gurus because I can't think of a better word right now that you follow. Because I think Date with Destiny is quite pricey, right?
Yeah, it's 4,500. It was $4,500 for me. My wife was 4,000, for 2 tickets. So it's not cheap. Yeah. I went to a couple others when I was in LA, and so one was Chris Howard, and I honestly I don't really remember getting anything out of it, but like I'm always willing to try stuff. Like I can go to one, it was free. Like if you go to these things for 1 or 2 days and you got time in your life and you get nothing out of it, that's still okay. If you get something out of it, then great. But it actually then he's like, oh, I got tickets to this Larry Loic thing. And I would never recommend going to a Larry Loic event.
Okay.
It was also free. It was like 2 days, but there was like guys there that you could pay to work with, and some were better than others. One I actually paid like $1,000, and so it led me to I sell training plans on my website, so that's like the one passive income I have. And he came up with some ideas to like make this better, and so I could sell more. And so this was back in 2013. And I mean, just because I was willing to take action and do stuff like that, payoff on that $1,000, and if you count the 2 seminars, that's 4 days. Like, I mean, it's been like a multiple times payoff just from being willing to try those, even though, I mean, one guy was just absolutely awful. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend those, but one other story, if we're not going too long. So when we're at Date with Destiny, he has some other guys. He has other events like Wealth Mastery, Business Mastery, which I think Business Mastery might very well be worthwhile for. I mean, that's probably like $4,000 or $5,000, maybe more. I don't know. Like if you've got the money and you're looking to create a business or grow your business, I would say that's probably definitely worthwhile. But so he had some guy speak about it before Tony came on stage that day, and that guy, he's probably 50 now, I'm guessing. And he's telling his story, and he's talking about business mastery. But that guy was a homeless guy in Santa Monica, and he tells his story like he's very open about it. And I think he lived in Vermont or Connecticut or somewhere, and he had a bad home life, and he wanted to get away from it. So when he turned like 18 or something, he just went to LA, and he lived on the streets, and he was homeless. And I don't know how long he was homeless, like a year or something. And then he started working at a telemarketing company. And then, just by continuing to do stuff, he got in the scrap metals business and built his own business, and now very wealthy and successful. But like he was one of those homeless guys that turned into something. And like they've all got their story for how they got there. And that's why I'm curious. I was so curious, how did that other guy get there? But he wouldn't tell me. But my wife had a bad experience in Philadelphia with a homeless guy, which is actually why she moved to Boulder, and I met her and we got married. And hearing that story just totally changed her feeling about homeless people and understanding like there's some reason that they got there, and who knows what it is, but they've probably had some tough life. They've probably made bad decisions, but I mean, a lot of good people end up that way.
Since I think we do have a little bit more time, if you don't mind, I'm kind of curious to dig a little bit more into Date with Destiny and like some of the big things you've kind of already mentioned a little bit, but why was it so powerful? Like what was some of the revelations you got from it?
Man, it's almost hard to explain. Like if you've seen the show, I don't know that it really can like show you what you do for 6 days. So there's like 3,000 people there, and you just have to be willing to act like a fool, to let loose, to be open. And so you're doing a lot of like he does a lot of jumping around. You've never been to one of his
I've
of his
never
stuff?
been to one. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I mean, it's pricey, obviously,
Yeah,
but this is a good endorsement, you know.
yeah. Um, so like you're always if you think you're gonna go somewhere and sit from like noon to 1 a.m. each day, you would think that's crazy. Like that just sounds like way too much. And my wife, she was skeptical. I wasn't going to go if she didn't want to go because I didn't want to be going in one direction with my life in my life, and she's going in another.
Mm.
And she kind of reluctantly agreed to go. I mean, I definitely didn't say you have to go, but she's like, all right, I know it's important to you, and she'll go. And we got 2 young kids at home, which she really didn't want to leave behind. But in the end, like everything we worried about wasn't worth worrying about. Everything worked out fine. And I remember her sitting there before he spoke on day one, and she's like, yeah, I'm really curious to see what he has to say that's so important that takes 6 days. And so anyway, he starts talking like he's just so mesmerizing with his stories, and you get to know the people around you. In day one, you sit wherever. Then after that, you're in groups of 64, and you pick a partner. So you got somebody you're working with every day. And a lot of the activities, break down into small groups. And then so people will stand up and tell a lot of their stories. And so like you saw in the documentary, like there's people who are willing to kill themselves. He's like, tell me who's ready to commit suicide. Like on day one, he said that. And he's like, if you're ready now, just wait till day 3, because we'll talk about it then. He's like, don't kill yourself up yet. And he kind of makes a joke about it.
Okay.
And then when that day comes, there's like 7 or 8 people that stand up, and he talks to 2 of them. I think the other people, get help through the other counselors working there. I honestly don't know for sure. And you hear some amazing stories, but then he uses them to give lessons. And like one of them is I don't know if how these will translate, me telling them versus you hearing it, but this one woman's talking about problems with her father, and like he's so weird, and how her and her mom, like they get along, but the father doesn't. And like he starts going, putting you in the father's shoes of saying, well, how does he feel? Like he feels you guys are foreign to him, and like you treat him like this. And basically comes back to like, everybody's innocent at heart. Like no matter who they are, no matter what they've done, like at some point they made decisions in their life that they thought were their best, the best, even though they were clearly wrong and they've done bad things. And so it kind of gives you more empathy and helps you understand other people. So there's a lot of stuff like that through the stories. Like you just learn, you learn more. One day is they actually in the documentary, they really didn't cover it, but you create this big board with like all your goals, actually like your 1-year goals, and then your values, like what are the values you want to move toward, and what are the values like you want to get away from. And then you go through like these really intense exercises with like you get in a group of 4 people, and like you have to act just really silly, and like act like this is the goal you want to move toward, and why, or this value and why you want it, and the ones that you want to move away from, and like all stuff. If somebody told you in advance, you'd like, I don't want to do all that stuff. But then when you get there, it just seems all normal. It's like, all right, this we're here, and this is what we're going to do. And then there's a day on relationships, which was really good for me and my wife, understanding each other better, and that's why I was so glad that she was there. I mean, there's just so many things.
Did you meet a lot of people that you still stay in touch with, or for the most part, it's like best friends for the event, and then it's kind of lose touch?
I would say a couple. Some people more than others. Like there's an incredible Facebook group from that actual event, and like people have stayed in touch that way and help motivate or inspire each other, and like remember lessons that we learned from the event. Because it's one of those things, if you just go and then you don't do anything after, like your life really, nothing will change. It's like anything. I mean, you go to something, like I went to something horrible and I took action and things got better. And so like, this is the same thing. You gotta keep doing stuff to keep moving forward. But there were, I did see a couple people I knew there, surprisingly. And there are some famous people that go there sometimes. I know
Yeah,
Chris Everett, the tennis player, was there.
hmm.
Although I never saw her, but she was there.
Because that is one of the benefits, I think, of going to an event that's cost $4,500 is everyone else there also paid it, and they're also either very serious into this, or they're somewhat successful and they can afford to do something like that.
Yeah, it's a great way to meet. And I would say probably business mastery is the same way, even more so, because everybody's there for one reason, to grow their business.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone that hasn't watched the documentary, definitely go check it out. So I'm not your guru, or I'm not your effing
Yeah, it's
guru, or
called I'm
something
Not
like
Your Guru. And like I know
that.
there's some people, like I honestly don't talk about this experience with a lot of people because they think it's weird or they don't understand it, and like, or they're turned off by it for whatever reason. I know my father-in-law watched it, and like Tony does swear a lot, and there's a lot of swearing in the
Yeah.
opening segment, and so like he thought that was a little weird. So like people have different reactions to it, but I think your audience like is open to growth, and it's something worth considering.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, where can people find out more about you and everything that you're doing?
I guess the best place is triathletetraining.com, which is where, my web, it's the website for my podcast.
Perfect. Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.